Hello and welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. Today is Friday, February 1st, 2019. My name is Jason Lahara, and we've got a small but good crew today. You guys want to say hello? Hey, Justin.
So,
are you surviving the polar vortex situation?
I think so far I have through lots of layering.
Yeah. good.
I have a Viking mask that helps too.
Oh, does it have horns?
No, it just has like a beard.
Or is it just the mask?
It's it's like it has a mustache and a beard, and then it has eye holes. So it frightens children and keeps me warm. So it's good for two things.
Nice. Kevin, you're also surviving the vortex. Is your beard sufficient insulation?
The beard helps. Also, I didn't go outside. I went outside this morning for the first time since like Tuesday, so that helped a lot.
Oh boy, that's rough. Sheriff, any vortexes in Algeria right now?
No, even if the winter is hard this year, but we are okay.
Good.
Yeah, the weather is good now.
Yeah, in Long Beach, we've just been getting rain. Nothing too crazy. So today we're going to talk about what we've been working on the last couple of weeks, give demos. Then I think we have a couple of topics. I'm going to talk about why it might be our last contributors meeting. And then I think there was some chat in the CanJS channel in our Slack. So yeah, let's get started. Kevin, do you want to show off some DevTools stuff?
I do, yeah. Show some stuff that I might have shown off last week, but I'm going to show it again because it's better now.
Fine.
Cool. So yeah, I've been working on DevTools. So the first thing that I want to show off is now if you go to the CanJS panel, normally you'll see just your tree view. But if you have an element selected in the elements panel and then you go over here, it doesn't work. Demos are great. Yeah, then your component is selected by default. I don't know why that didn't work the first time. Anyway, you can see this now. Also, I've been working on breakpoints. This is something I think I showed off last week, but I'm going to show it off again and go into a couple more details that I didn't talk about last time. So we can see now we've got this view model mutation breakpoints panel up here. You can create simple breakpoints for properties on your view model. Like you can see this can place order property here. If I select something, we're going to get this breakpoint now because that value changed. You can place an order now because you have at least one item. So this changes to true. And you can also see down here, we print out the log stack and you can see what the new value is. And you can take a look at your view model, whatever you want to do. So you can see the log stack here. You can see the normal stack over on the right. You can also make more complex breakpoints. Like if I want to do this order has an items property, which is a list. So if I do order.items.length, I can say if it's greater than 2, I want to break. So now it's 2, and now it's 3, and we get this breakpoint. You can see now it's checking. This is what we're calling like a Boolean breakpoint. If you're using any comparison operator, it's going to create a breakpoint like this. So in this case, you'll only get this breakpoint when the value of this expression changes from falsy to truthy. So if I go back to less than 2, you don't see that breakpoint hit. But if it's greater, it becomes true again, you can see this breakpoint. One other thing that
Kevin, is it possible to actually have the Q stack be focused, like scrolled to? Probably not.
What do you mean?
So like when a breakpoint hits, we see the actual stack, right? But
oh, you mean scroll down
in theory, you could scroll that window.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the Q stack show up there?
Because this isn't on the stack, I would guess. I'm not sure, actually. That's a good question.
Yeah, if you can just call Q's log stack the line before, you would imagine that log stack should be populated.
Maybe, well, because of this debugger, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious why. The other thing is, do you think we should put the those logs in a console group? That you expand it to see it? I just feel like it's a lot. And then if you were doing this a bunch of times, it would all get kind of like smashed together. But we could wrap that queues log stack in a console group. And then the nice thing about that is you could write what the issue, you could write out what the person typed in.
Yeah, the
you know what I mean? So that you could be like, hey, breakpoint log stack for this, and then you could expand and collapse it to see what was causing it. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be cool. We'd have to change log stack, right? So they would do that all the time?
No, I think if
I can just create a console group before this?
Yeah, and after. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It works.
Yeah. Let me give that a try.
And then there's one thing. So just this function, I think it would be useful to let people like know what the heck they're looking at. Like with a little comment there, like
this function.
Yeah, just like you have broken inside of something, like this is from the debugger. Or try to like if there's a way to even hide this more, so that like there's just like this one line. I know you're probably evaluating the whole thing, but if there's a way to make it so it was a little less, the user has to look at.
Yeah, so like we could just eval this debugger statement again, and that would, or we could eval what? This is using Chrome's the Chrome API's version of eval. So if for some reason this were to throw, it wouldn't throw an error in your app. It's run in a separate JavaScript context. So that's the reason that I'm doing it this way. But we could use normal eval probably on just the debugger piece, maybe, to make that look a little nicer.
The other way you could, if you really want to get crazy, but I don't know if you're a pretty chill guy. A crazy person would use source maps to make this like some version of what the expression they were evaluating, and it would like break on that. It would look like they broke on that or something. I don't know.
There's some. Think of that.
I'm part mad. You must know.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I will look into it. The one reason that I like showing more of this is that you can actually like see exactly. So we typed in this like order.items.length greater than 2, and the actual like debugger creates this more complex expression that actually makes this safer for you and puts the view model in front of it. And so in this case, you can actually see like what the component or what the VM is, and you can look at other values, and it's nice to be able to see the new value and stuff like that. That's one reason I left some of this stuff in.
How did you do that versus like why didn't you use can key to do that?
Because then I would have to put can key in can debug.
Okay, I
didn't want to have a weird circular dependency logic. So yeah, I'm parsing it separately in DevTools.
Okay. The only reason why can key would be nice is because it would allow you to use virtual properties when the promise is resolved.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
For now.
That's a good point.
I mean, yeah.
Cool. All good questions. Thanks. So the next thing I wanted to show off is these things now are actually being restored when you refresh the page. So if I reload this, we'll see that once the tree comes back in, then you see these breakpoints get restored, and we get the same thing over again. If we hit that case, then our breakpoint still works, which is pretty nice.
So
the other thing, sorry,
Kevin, I think partly I'm making us undersell this, right? What we've done is, I think, is pretty, or what you've done here is pretty cool. You can see when a value changes, right, through a debugger tool, right? Hey, you want to know why this is changing? Like in CanJS now, it's like, hey, I want to know why can place order is changing. We've started to give relatively good clarity on when that happens, you can figure out when it happens, and you can, with the trace log stack, you can figure out why it happened, right? So, I mean, would you say that you've made mutations great again?
No, I would not.
Okay.
Not because it's not true. I wouldn't say it. That was a long setup for that joke, Justin. But yeah, I think this is really cool. I want to see how people use it. I know that the few people that I've forced to try it out have thought this is super useful, and have been impressed by how it works, or that it works in the first place. But yeah, I think it's a big step into making it easier to debug things like this that are using observable view models and mutations and stuff like that. Anyway, so the next thing that I want to show off is I've also updated the debugging guide with some documentation for all of these things. So if you want to see some more details on how to use this stuff, you can go into the debugging guide and click on this using the CaneJS DevTools panel, and that shows you each of these things and kind of how they work, and gives you some details about how you can use each of all of these features. So.
Kevin, if there's a chance that you're going to come back to this page, to my everlasting shame, I have not linked to the guide I put on batovi.com in this guide.
I am going to, I have some changes I need to make today. So I'm going to do that. Where do you want
Near the top too, just somewhere like it's going to be obvious. Like, by the way, this is all very good information here. If you want to run through a lot of this in terms of a video, you should check this out. I really should just, if there was a lot of time, I would just like put it all together, which really needs to be done, and not have it two places. But it's such a useful tutorial and video. I think it's a shame if people, they don't know how to find that.
Yeah, I'll put a link in there. Cool.
Thank you.
Yep, and that is it for my demo.
Sweet, thanks, Kevin. While we're talking about CaneJS stuff, Sheriff, do you want to talk about some issues you've closed out recently?
Yes. So
wait, would it be Mama instead of, right?
What?
Did Kevin Mama? No, he didn't. Mamga.
Oh,
Mama, it'd be Mga. I'll take you this way too far.
So yesterday I released CanStash with an enhancement that now we are able to use built-in helpers as nested call expression, like in this example in the release. So here equal is used inside the end helper, and with the bunch of documentation enhancement, or one documentation enhancement. This is the issue that no, this is not the real issue. So maybe I put the wrong number.
So that was actually not working. The EQ inside of there wasn't working.
This?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't working.
I think just if and unless were broken.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Those are the only ones you.
Yeah, because they weren't properly handling the shifting of arguments when it's.
They weren't handling options not existing.
Yeah, when options doesn't exist. Yeah. I should have anticipated that. That's my fault.
I think EQ was working fine. I think it was just if and unless that were still broken. But none of it was documented.
Okay. And the other issue I fixed, or we fixed, was the we should give a warning when a partial is not found, and maybe it will be released. It's in review now, and it will be released the next week. And the issue was opened by Kevin. Thank you. And also I fixed the issue when we use an anchor on an SVG tag here, and hopefully it will be also release next week is in review right now. And the other one, thank you for this for the community for helping us by filling the issues, is when we use the wildcard for the type definitions as a constructor type. So now we are able to use it, and we are able to put a wildcard for the constructor types, and it will be working fine. And hopefully all this will be released next week at least. This is it for me. Okay.
Sweet. Thank you, Shira. Yeah, thank you. Justin, do you have something you want to demo?
Sure. I have a few things. The first thing is I finished at least a good first cut of updating Bitovi's JavaScript and DOM and debugging training that is now on Bitovi University. So if you want to learn like what I would consider like the most essential things to know about JavaScript and the DOM, you can go through these trainings. There's videos. There's the videos are a little bit out of date, but not too bad. But there's updated slides, and the exercises are now you're able to do all of them totally online in a code pen. So for example, and there's also some other things I guess I want to show, which I think are cool in here. So yeah, you can do all the exercises just in a code pen. Shows you the test code, what you need to know, and the solution for each one, and then you can do them all. And then the big solution is printed at the end for all the sub exercises. But what to show about this, which I think is cool, is I made a fun slider demo that I want to show. So I talk about this a lot when I'm teaching Bitovians. A lot of times people are like, why do we need to understand the DOM? And my answer to that is because you want to build cool stuff. And while not many people build cool things anymore, what I mean by cool is people build designers. I blame the designers. And because there's really the designers doing what users want, I blame the users. People don't put fun controls in apps anymore. It's all like click, because that's all people can do anymore with computers is click. There's no real ingenuity in terms of user interfaces. Everything is trying to make it as simple as possible, which I get, but it also disturbs me as a developer because I want to make fun, unique, try new things in terms of interface design, and I want to build it. But when you do build anything interesting and you want a designer to be able to style this, just take this slider with whatever padding and whatever dimensions they want of this, it can be rather tricky to make that work. You need to understand how the DOM lays out everything, padding, spacing, all of that works. And this is just an example of a slider built for CanJS that look, I can change the padding around the slider and I can change the width and height, and it works. And even if I were to start moving the page around, it maintains, it's not like if I move it over here, if I move it over there and I change the page, look at it, it scales the right position. It doesn't just because it's absolutely positioned, just go to the right of the page. And then even more so, if I drop the padding, you'll notice it's going to move actually to the right to fit, and the height and width is going to move to the right, and now will move to the left. So this is a very dynamic widget that just whatever a designer or anybody's going to throw at it in terms of, changing the page, that kind of thing, it's just going to always work. And that's why you need to understand the DOM. The next thing I made, which I think is cool, which this has existed for a while, but I think I've updated it. Am I logged in as the wrong? Oh, maybe I gotta save it first. Full page view. Okay, so this is a list of every single actually it does pretty much list every single event but it allows you to do it, and this animation will run when that event happens, and it'll show you all the details of that event. So this is just a fun way of exploring all the different events. I recently added the pointer events to this. I also added a little bit of the drag. I didn't have time to add all of them, but I just added some of the drag drop ones so you can see them working. And then I just listed, kind of anything that wasn't already written up here, I essentially just looped through a div element and found all of its other events. And then I also looped through everything on the document and then everything on the window. So this kind of gives a list of all events that's really discoverable in Chrome. Ideally, I'd love to have an explanation and a way of triggering every single one of these. Some of them aren't going to be, like, you could see before cut and stuff like that works. And you can see, like, cool thing over here is I made it so that if you hover over the, if it looks like an element, you can hover over it and it'll highlight the element. So you can see, like, the target of before cut when I was on this TD was the TD itself. I don't know.
That's really cool.
Fun playground page. Feel free to make it better, anybody, because it's in a code pen, so you can fork it. I think that's it for this that I think was fun. There's also the debugging. This is a really good one. If, you know, it's still surprising me. Patoga has a lot of good engineers, and still some of them I'll be like, you know, especially this one, hey, something's changing, you want to figure out how, use this setter technique, or use conditional breakpoints, things like that. You know, this does, I think, a good job of making it so you can explore what the JavaScript is doing in almost any situation. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about, at least, was just a little bit of TypeScript, because I just had my head around TypeScript. Although this is, I'm going to show my local version. So I'm helping give a training on RxJS and TypeScript, and Jennifer is going to do the Angular part and probably the TypeScript part too. But I was just completing the generics, and I thought this would just be worth touching on, just for generic JavaScripty world interest. So what I think these were, like, at least one of my C days, these were kind of called polymorphic types, but they call it generics here in TypeScript land. And let me try to introduce the problem. In JavaScript, you can do something as simple as, like, I want to have a function called wrap as value. It takes a value and wraps it as an object. And then I could wrap a number 4, and I could wrap the string high. Now, in TypeScript, I might want to be able to pass the 4 object to a get dollars function that would, like, read the value and write, you know, call its toFixed method, and basically do something with that value, and then object, I might want to pass a high object to do something with that value and treating it as a string. Now in TypeScript, even though I'm saying that these things this has to be an object with that is get dollars takes an object with its value, with a value property that is a number, even though I'm declaring that, TypeScript itself will not complain if I just called get dollars with an object that has a string, even though it would cause a runtime error because strings don't have a toFixed method. So when I was trying to do this on a string, it would blow up. So there's a variety of different ways you could solve this in TypeScript. Like, you could say, well, when I get the value out of wrap as value, I'm going to give my variable a type so it knows what those are. And then TypeScript would be able to, if you did something like this, TypeScript would throw a compile warning. Another way is you write different functions, one for strings, the other for numbers. Another way is you could overload that by providing that definition, but that's just a weird way of, like, that's a less elegant way, and there's probably, this can be, you know, if you'd have to write it for every single possible type, and then you're right back to any anyways, which is just, well, borderline to any anyways. You do get the debugging benefits out of it, or it breaks earlier benefits, compile time errors. But with generics, which you can solve it this way in TypeScript, essentially functions and also classes can take essentially like another argument, similar or multiple arguments. Like this is your arguments, but here's also your arguments that you want to take in terms of defining a type. And what I can say is, given a my type to wrap as value, right, which I'm passing here, saying I'm basically passing it number, giving it number, I know that the argument needs to be a number, match my type, and the return object has a value property that is of my type. This is how you just specify the return value in TypeScript. So what TypeScript allows you to do is then I can call wrap as value and explicitly pass it, hey, I'm using a number, but I can also infer the type from the first argument and then use that to understand whatever the return value has to be. So if you define your function like this, which is called with generics, then essentially you get all TypeScript will automatically understand what for object and high object need to look like, and then any calls to like get dollars where it's expecting a number, it knows that this is a value with a string, and we'll give a compile time error here now. So this is generics, generically. And one final thing real quick.
Question, actually,
yeah.
before you go on. Do you have to pass the generic? So since it infers it, right, in that second example, do you have to have it defined on the function, the wrap as value?
Do I have to have this?
Yeah.
Or to do that? Yeah, if I didn't have this, well, if I didn't have this, it would be expecting, well, I couldn't have any of these. Because,
oh, you can't.
Well, because it wouldn't know what my type is. Like, it would assume that the value is of actual type my type. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So it would complain saying there is no my type for value to be if I didn't have this.
Gotcha. That is a lot.
Huh?
It's cool. It's cool that you can do that. It just seems like a lot to wrap your head around to make it work right. That's cool. People like that.
Well, I mean, there was a bug recently. I mean, to me, I brought this up. I think that in a Node project, a lot depends. I mean, everything in the world depends on like everybody's skill set, what they're willing to learn and put up with and do. And in a client app, I feel like TypeScript is a lot more than I would want to do, especially because I tend to like to write very dynamically. Yeah. And I don't want to deal with all of the extra work that has to go into writing dynamically to make TypeScript work. That being said, though, I mean, there's definitely times where TypeScript would have helped me find a bug much faster. Where I do think TypeScript would have a tremendous amount of value is in Node code. Because debugging Node, maybe I'm not as proficient at Node is in that environment as I am in the client. But debugging Node often seems to me like, to get like especially when I'm running something, it's like hard to get the debugger in there in place. It's like I have to, Node will start, but I can't like, if it hasn't required the file, then somehow I have to have like a debugger before, like once the file is actually loaded, but before the code has actually run. Or in JavaScript, a lot of times a bug is happening because I'm clicking a button. But like by the time I click that button, I can easily get a debugger, a conditional breakpoint set up. All that's rather easy. And like, it's kind of running over time. So sometimes I can recreate the bug without even having to refresh. It's very easy for me to get breakpoints in the browser because it's like a living, stateful thing. Mm-hmm. Node is not that. And it can be kind of annoying to debug. And because it's harder to debug, I find that, especially for something like BitDocs, which is probably the biggest Node project that I've personally worked on, TypeScript would have been great for BitDocs because it has like hard constraints. And there's a doc object, and I wouldn't have to know what that looks like. And it's well defined and things like that. I think there would be a lot of advantages for TypeScript in that environment. Anyways, those are my high level feelings about TypeScript. The final thing I just wanted to show, just as I wanted to create just how to create a tree node. So this is a node that would have a left or right child, and you can give it a root value, and then you could add things like Chasen. Hey, Chasen, and Chasen because is less than Jennifer in both person and alphabetically.
Agreed.
Would go to the left, and then I guess Tom is greater alphabetically at least, and would go to the right. So you can add people to this root, and then it would just kind of build the tree recursively underneath the root. And then if we added Matthew, it would say, oh, well, I go to the right of Jennifer, but then to the left of Tom. And then how you build something like this, just wanted to show the solution, is like this in TypeScript. So first thing is I have to provide it a comparison function for how to compare the values here. So here I've defined a function that takes two strings and returns 1 or -1 to go left or right, essentially. So this is how you define an interface for a function. So this is really a function that takes this is a function that is generic, so it takes some kind of type. It takes two arguments, v1 and v2, as that type, and then it returns a number. So in this case, in the one up above, it's going to take two strings and return a number. But you could also have two numbers and return another number. So the tree node is housing values of a certain type. So it's going to have a value property for each node. It's going to have a comparison, which is a function that needs to be passed, and it's going to store those when you construct it. And then it'll have an optional left or right property that will be another tree node. And then add is relatively simple. It just runs the comparison. See if it's greater than 1. If it's greater than 1, it means it needs to go on the left. If there isn't a left, it creates one and kind of passes everything down. And if there is a left, it just recursively calls add on the left. And then right does the exact same thing. And you can see I'm just like making sure that T, that type, that's the generic type, is passed down. So then this would be smart enough where if I try to add something that wasn't a string, it would complain. Or if I try to in the answer here, did root.right.value something that didn't belong on a string, it would complain. So this is kind of the most complex example we have in the TypeScript training. Just wanted to go through that, give people a fun introduction to it, or an interesting introduction to it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Cool. That's it for me.
Sweet. Thanks, Justin. I don't have a demo, but I have a topic, I guess, what I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. So Batovi, we're starting an online meetup. Our first one is going to be in 2 weeks on Valentine's Day. I think we're going to run it at around 9 a.m. Pacific. So wear your pink, I guess. I found out what I'm going to wear today. So wear pink. We're going to have presentations that are like 5 or 10 minutes long, on a wide variety of subjects that we think that people in our community are going to find interesting. Basically, content that we think is going to be interesting for ourselves is going to be interesting to our community, and then hopefully outside of our community as we grow. So I've been talking about, or I've been talking to people about presentations. I'm not 100% sure all of the ones that are going to go into the first one, but I've been talking to people about like intros to WebRTC, to DevOps, to accessibility, to how terrible the drag and drop API is and how to make a better one, to Chrome extensions, just kind of like all over interesting topics. So yeah, our goal for the meetup is for everyone in our community to participate. We know people are you know, building cool shit. So we want people to like show off what they're building, and especially what they learned in the process of building stuff. So this is a meetup. So we want people to actually meet. So we're not going to host this over Google Hangouts. You would think that hanging out in Google Hangouts would be easier, but it's not. So we're going to use something called Zoom to have everyone be able to like join the meetup and you know, share their video or not, and you know, talk and chat and all that jazz. So yeah, so we plan on having the talks and then some time at the end to just like hang out and chat. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work out. We could break off into breakout rooms on subjects, or depending on how many people are there, we can just all hang out and chat. I think that will be a good opportunity for us to do like more Q&A with the presenters, and then get into like more like interesting talks about topics. So yeah, I did not mention the introductions room, and I still need to post in the introductions room, Justin. If you haven't seen, we started a community Slack a couple weeks ago. So join us on our Slack. There's going to be a blog post with the Slack and with the meetup information, all that coming out next week. Yeah, I think that's everything. You just muted yourself, just FYI.
I know there was a loud background noise with babies going on. So cool. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah,
I'm excited for it.
I am too. I think the talks are going to be really interesting. I think the format of keeping them short is going to like just really distill down the interesting bits of the topics, and also give us an opportunity to go like, you know, go through 4 or 5 talks without the meetup being too long. Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm excited for people to actually like hang out too. I think that'll be really cool to have people chat and whatever. So yeah, definitely join the Slack. I'll post a link in the forum and on the YouTube video too. Go to the introductions room, say hello. I'll be doing that today. Yeah,
I hope people should let us know what they want to hear about too.
Yeah,
you know, I think
for sure.
I want, especially I want to not. I mean, obviously we're highly JavaScript-y focused here in general, but I still think that Bitovi has a lot to offer in terms of how to do software development, in terms of management and things like that. Because one thing is, when you've worked for as many different companies as we have, you get to see a lot of variance of management practices, things that work, things that don't. I definitely want to share some of those things. And also we have some designers, and I'm always curious about user interface design, especially, you know, I was already talking about like, why doesn't anybody make cool stuff anymore? I hope one of them gives a talk on that and explains why. Like, here's the very good reasons. No one knows how to do drag and drop, so that's why no one does it anymore.
You know, on that topic, I think it's interesting that to me, there's a separation between like mainstream user design, where you really have to make things as simple as possible. But on the more interesting spectrum, or on the more interesting side of the spectrum, is like professional tools and being able to like prototype and build out designs. Like when I was looking at your slider example, I was thinking, oh, this is exactly the sort of like developer like debugging tool that you'd want to have to like play with interface design and that sort of thing. So it's just like a different workflow that requires like more interesting design.
Maybe. I still am convinced that like they would be like, well, you still want to target them. It's kind of like, I mean, it's in some ways the lessons that we've learned in terms of how to build a framework and things like that. You build for the lowest common denominator, and that's sad.
I don't think that's strictly the case.
I'm going to use Bodhi, my 1-year-old, to user test everything we do, including all of our guides. He can't read, but I still want him to be able to understand it.
You just need to teach him copy paste and
that's true.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's fair. I think kids are naturally better at it. Like my son knows how to use a phone better than my mom does for sure, and he's 2.5.
Good, fair point. Maybe like a Cocker Spaniel or something.
There you go.
And I guess I didn't say, so I think this will be the last of our normal contributors meetings, at least in this format, because we're going to be putting our effort into like the things that we would demo and that we want to show off. We'll put effort into to making good little talks about those and putting them in the meetups. I think there's still going to be space for us to have like chats. Like in a minute, we'll talk about the CanJS thing that we were discussing earlier, or you guys were discussing earlier. But I think those could go into the hangout portion of the meetups too. I'm not.
I mean, I think there still might be usefulness for like a status for CanJS and DoneJS and stuff like that on its own. But I would imagine that what we try to do is put some of the bigger, more important demos into the bigger meetup.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's it on that. Did you guys want to talk about, I wasn't actually fully following the conversation. You guys were talking about something in the CanJS channel, and someone said,
I don't know,
in the contributors meeting.
Yeah, no. I did say that. I don't know. Yeah, we can talk about it if you think it would be interesting. I don't know. I think.
Well, let's talk about what it is. What it is well, let's open it up so people can see here. So the idea is that what should, if you have a component, this from X do?
So yeah, two different people had this question this week of like, how do you take an object and like spread its properties onto your view model? It's like in React, I think you can do like, there's a spread, you can just do a spread operator onto the thing, it does it.
Like that, right?
Yeah, I think the dots are on the other side.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you can do that, and it'll take all of the properties off of obj and set them onto the React thing. So yeah, a couple people wanted to do this. There's a long-standing issue open for making it easier to do like an assign from, like that on line 8 there, the second example Justin has. So yeah, I don't know. So Justin, your argument was that if you did this from equals X, the view model of my component should be X.
By the way, here's the prototype code. Okay, bye. For how you would do it. It is in Slack. Yeah, my argument is that from doesn't, like, this is, in every other case, like when you write it normally, it's effectively doing a, VM.A equals B. It is more or less like an equal operator.
Yeah, sort of.
It is an equal operator and plus because it does the equal, what the equal operator would do, and then on top of that, it also listens to the right-hand side, and anytime that changes, it updates the left-hand side.
Yeah, but it also will, like, it'll go through, if you have a setter on VM for A, it'll run through that setter. If you have like,
which this would do too.
It would do.
A setter would do, if you did that on a normal property.
Yeah, no, I know. So yeah, if you extrapolate that out and do the same thing, say like VM equals X.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, we don't have like a, so that would
This
get
could be
rid of all
equivalent to like, element.view model.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking this does.
Which would like ignore all of your property definitions, ignore whatever
you would just blow away your view model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to me, that doesn't seem like something I ever want anyone to do. Just because all of our like tests are written around view models and how properties behave on those view models. In this case, like none of that would be valid.
Well, if you didn't have a view model, it's more like to me the use case is what you would use. I mean, I don't think there's a extremely strong use case for this to be clear. I just think that what I'm proposing is the keep from doing from assignment and then assign from doing assigning things. So this way, like you can do A assign from Y, and that's gonna copy all of the properties on Y to something A. Now, if A is null or undefined, we have to figure out like what it does. If this isn't an object, I would probably create one there if there wasn't one, and then copy onto it essentially whatever Y is. Like I would just probably just clone Y essentially, and then set it as A would be what I think the sane default behavior. But it should never just set, just like this should never be like, what if A was undefined? Well, it shouldn't just say set A to equal Y. It should always be like some copy, I think, for assign from. So that's why I just want like from doing what from should do and assign from doing what assign from should do. And then, by the way, that we'd also probably have like update from, which would call can reflect update and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think keeping the consistency is good, but I also think we should just not allow this from equals X in that case then, and just show a warning and say we probably want to use this sign from.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't care enough about that. Like it can go either way. I'm more just wanting these things to be consistent.
Yeah. I
mean, getting to another topic, I have been feeling like I really like why does React do props at all now? Why do any of this? If I were React and I am CanJS, I am CanJS. Just consolidate on this, I feel like nowadays. That's how you pass anything. And if you want A and B, you just do A, B. And then you get rid of all the other syntax. And why not just focus on that and do it that way? And then is there an equivalent? I mean, we borderline could just copy this in CanJS and just have something like that. Now, this is much more JavaScripty than HTML, and that's the problem. It's like somebody React was smart, and they're just like, we're just going to bet everything is on JavaScript except for the barest minimal HTML-ish thing. And we're kind of like, we still like HTML a little bit. I don't know. I'd be curious to see if like we can just come up with a way that's like a consolidated way, but it's harder with two-way bindings that we support, right? That's the issue. Is like React, it's like only one way ever. You can't make a connection that goes the other way. So we don't, I mean, we could do a weird mix of like.
What if you had 10 properties? What would that, and they weren't all just single letters?
Like that.
But how would, you're saying if we supported this, how would we do that?
What I mean, we could do whatever we want with Stash. Right? It wouldn't be hard to just be like, okay, fine.
but right now, stash bindings partially work in HTML.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's because we still want to support HTML. That's the issue. But does anybody actually benefit from that?
What do you mean?
Does anybody actually benefit from us restraining ourselves to HTML, pseudo-valid HTML?
You mean, do people use that?
Yeah. Do people make benefit from that in any way? I don't think so. Right? I mean, the only reason why sometimes people, like, if you're the fact that you can, I mean, this is the whole like web component, like, React is basically like off on its own, doing its own thing. And we're like, well, web components are the future. So the argument against all of this kind of stuff is that, like, well, web components are the future. And if we really believe that, then, you do try to maintain everything in HTML. But then why not just do something like this then? And then you could just do everything inside there. And then just have like whatever syntax you want going on inside of here. And then it's there. That's a lot easier to parse and deal with than this is.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know what you mean. I like that, but I mean, I do that. I mean, I use components in HTML and make my properties all lowercase so that I can pass them in that way. I wish you could do more, but it doesn't. You can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we should.
Well, then fine. Then this is like another way that you could do it is we could just have a syntax that's like, this is a two-way binding.
Yeah,
and then
this
is
arrows around the equal. I think we talked about this 2 years ago. Just put less than or greater than on one side of the arrow, or on one side of the equals. I mean.
Oh, you mean?
Yeah.
Or. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm just saying, like, what is this assign from and stuff like that is rather heavy, and obviously there's like we had to have to for assign from we'd have to do assign. What people see in the actual DOM is this.
Yeah.
Which is weird, right? It's helpful a little bit for debug. I mean, I think that's the biggest argument is just like, hey, debugging, you get to see these bindings. That's actually really, I think, nice in HTML. Most other frameworks remove it. And it's like, okay, you can see what's kind of going on here, inspecting. But you would have that benefit in here. And this is just like a little DSL for how, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to copy every X, like everything on X is just going to be like splayed out. And then there's special other bindings that would be on top of that. CanJS 6, everybody.
I don't feel like this is actually better though. Like I know I don't think that I would add the assign from API either. I think that if people, I know I would think that it'd be easier to understand if you were passing in like a props property, and then in the view model of the component, you're taking what you needed or assigning to your view model or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, people could build it that way. It's a little.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
The reason why you what you lose doing it that way is can bind, as you know intimately, Chasen, can bind does all of the debugging, log what changes me, log what I change.
Yeah, that's true.
And people would have to, that's one consideration when you're doing assign from is you'd probably want like this to somehow know all of the properties that are coming from X and to wire that up. No one's going to do that by default if you just have your setter, like if you just have set, if you were just trying to do something like this, but we're doing it right now, you would do it like a thing. To go to A, you do a thing. I don't know the name, but you would do it like this. Then you get your value of Y, and then you would do assign this that a y, and you could, of course, you could do it this way. The thing is just like it's not going to be wired up the same way that we would wire it up for people in terms of the debugging stuff. I don't know if that's important, but that's kind of like part and parcel. One of the CanJS's strengths now is this being able to trace this. So I would hate to lose that. My concern here, though, just like to talk about this, I actually think this is cool. I actually mean from a ease of building, this is actually far easier to deal with than this kind of stuff, and it would simplify things a lot for Kevin and I if we're implementing this. The problem I have with this, though, is this just doesn't exist in, JavaScript, and it's weird that we would just be adding this new magical syntax, which is fine-ish. But if we want people to also be able to do stuff like foo.bar, I don't know, it gets a little weird. We'd have to be very careful with how we evaluate this stuff. Ideally, this would just become transpiled to normal JavaScript. So we would just like pick up on the syntax that we know and then leave everything else, which would be the coolest way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea just to do this in general, though. I like this because it could be done rather generically.
What do you mean?
It doesn't have to necessarily be. This is that idea that I talked about a long time ago where like, what if we just made like a bindings package that was just designed to like shuttle values from one custom element to another?
Yeah.
Right. If you remember, I was like, okay, you had like, thing one here, and someone made that, and then like you had like data producer, like this was getting like, how do you get, if you just want a custom element, and this was like emitting, I don't know, random values or something, and you had data consumer, how do you get these together? I mean, this is something actually Matthews brought up a bunch too. How do you make these things communicate? There's not a good way. One way I was just like, well, we could actually just make a can bind that you could just stick anywhere and then like tell it what elements, sibling elements. But another way would just be like, I don't know, this is just, I'm shooting from the hip here, is you could just do like somehow, I don't know if I like what I'm about to write, but you can just like somehow data produce some way to like identify these things, or maybe they have to be given an ID or a class name or something like that. But some way to identify a data producer, and then say like value, and then you could say the number that you want to set it to is number, and you're doing something like that or something like this. And this we know is a one-way binding. It's going to go here. It's going to listen to data producer's value events by default, and then try to set that on number here. And we could just make a bind, a bind property that works through mutation observers that just does all of this, and maybe as a mix-in for when data consumer becomes alive, so that it can get that property before it has to really be waited to be put in the page. It can like, do it while it's at least connected to the DOM. I don't know, or not the main DOM, but just like even on a document fragment.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's along the lines of the thing I proposed for the progressive, using stash bindings as progressive enhancement that Julian for his PHP apps.
Yeah, I just like the idea of that the syntax here becomes something like JavaScript-y, basically. And it's terse. I mean, that's the reason. It's like this. I mean, I don't know. I guess I would push back one thing is on Chasen is, if you had like I do like that becomes like that to me, I don't know, is a lot more terse, less repetitive. I don't mind that at all.
I think that's harder to understand if you don't know what it means. But
maybe
I see the value in having just like a single bind property and then your declarations in there.
I'd be curious if you add, like, because I mean, people understand the, you know, people understand React, the, you know, this foo. I don't know if that's like, why is this? I wouldn't consider this any more clear than this.
That's a language feature, though. It's not a React feature.
This is a React wrapping in curly braces inside of like this kind of element is a React thing. Like
not the spread syntax though.
Not the spread syntax, but the curly here is there. Which
I mean, the spread syntax kind of is too. That's not supported by any. Object spread is not a real. Anyway.
It's not. It's not in any browser yet. You sure?
No,
yeah, it is. It's got to be.
I don't think it is.
I bet it is. Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure I know it is now because I think I did the RX. Well, maybe you're right. I don't know. I just did a training and it worked, but I can't remember if I had a transpiler on or not. Anyways, but well, they still have this though. They have, you know, I guess maybe it's a little bit more clear.
You're right. It's experimental in Chrome 60.
Yeah. I mean, this is not exactly. I mean, I guess this is a little bit more understandable than this. Because like in some ways the equal sign actually helps. I think the equal sign actually does make it read a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it would actually be easier to understand with the directional angle brackets. Or
so you would do it like, but then you're encroaching.
Then it also looks like math. I don't know.
Well, this
is why like. What's up?
This looks like arrow functions.
Yeah.
So that.
Then how do you represent? Yeah, I don't know. Probably just because it's different. I think the terser syntax is not as clear, but.
Yeah. I don't know.
In talking about like making a more terse syntax, it just takes me back to the 2.3 syntax arguments, which I know it's not the same. But.
Yeah, the reason is because we're conforming more to like here, it's more like JavaScript. Yeah, the problem is of course like your event bindings would still need to be, you know, like this doesn't, which actually brings me, okay, so I need it, we probably should wrap this up. But this is something that is related, which I've thought about is as part of this too, is that, you know, there's a lot of things that you want to pass data with and a function. This is like the drag drop example, where you only want to be able to, you know, drop if something is hovering over you. There's a common need where I would want to be able to be like, well, you know, on, you know, thing only on the like drag, or only allow drop. Like this is a drop. I want to handle drop, but I'm only going to handle it on .thing, and I want to somehow add this as like to my component as an event handler, and then when that happens, I want to call something. You know, this is why Vue has those. You know, Vue has the ability to mix in, like it has like event mix-ins. I forgot how it looks in the Vue, but it's like on. It'd be like us doing on-click prevent default, right? Now for Vue, they've got to like mix it into like in some ways on the framework level. There's not like a great way to like, you know, make a generic function. In an ideal world, like what I would want drop to do is basically produce something, take a function, and then essentially all I want it to do is really all you have to make it do is return a function that would take the event and a handler. Or not the event, sorry, the element and a handler. And then this drop function could be anything, and then you just have to make functions that look like this. And essentially it's like, okay, you know, as long as this on the left-hand side is a function that takes an element, which would be the context, and the handler, which is like what's produced on this right-hand side, go crazy, right? Well, then you can have functions that do, you could build functions that do functions that do functions, whatever you want on the left-hand side, right? It's just you're eventually getting it to get ready for the handler. Again, this is a crazy idea. I would love it if somehow, to me, this solves like a shortening problem. This is something that React can't do, something that CanJS can't do. Solving this problem and making it easy to like mix in arbitrary functional things like this, I think would be very useful. There's just, it would allow, you know, like the sortable example for the YouTube playlist, things like that just get a little bit easier when you can just like, I'm going to call a function, I'm going to do event handling this way. Like even these things, so it could just be like, then it would be actually your normal on event handler would be on click. And then on could just be a function looked up in the scope. And then on returns, you know, it's obvious. And then this is just going to add the event listener. And then it's got to return, essentially, I guess this would have to return an unsubscribe. I guess it's a little bit more complex, but I don't know. I just think that that's being able to do something like that would be very useful. But I don't know how to make that syntactically fit in with HTML. Anywho, food for thought.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Someday we'll crack it. Cool.
All right, shall we call it a wrap? Let's do it. It's been hour 10. If you made it this far, you've probably already liked and subscribed, but go ahead and hit that plus button or that thumbs up on this video anyway. Thanks for watching. I think we'll be back next week with a survey ideas because we'll be starting another survey next week. So yeah, it won't be too long. And then in 2 weeks on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 9 a.m. Pacific, we're going to have our first meetup. Blog post about that will be out shortly. Until then, see you on our Slack. See you guys. Bye.
Thanks.